All right, top dog traders, Barry Burns here, and let's get on with some more quizzes. I know you guys love these quizzes. Well, I don't know if you do or not, but hopefully you do, and you're learning from them. So let's do another one. Now, this one we're going to do a little bit differently, because we're going to do this one right on the heart, right edge of the screen. Also switched over to daily and weekly charts now. And we're looking at equities. Just thought I'd bring up Apple. Everybody knows about Apple. So, just trying to mix it up, show you different things. Oh, by the way, you'll notice down at the bottom right-hand corner of the price bar subgraph, there that says daily pivots require intraday data. So that's just because I've still got my intraday pivot indicator on there, and we don't use that for daily and weekly charts. So it brings up that little kind of error message just to let you know that, hey, that's an intraday indicator only, so that's why it's not plotting, and that's fine. If you wanted to remove that little message there, then you could just take the indicator off, and it's fine. But anyway, just for those who have the Top Dog Trading custom indicators, if you see that, that's why. It's not a problem. You just, it's just letting you know. Okay, so anyway, this is a potential setup here for you. We've got the daily on the left, the weekly on the right, obviously. And we've got a potential second retrace in the trend. So as you can see, we went up and made wave one, and then a failed three, and then a higher low with the A, and now we've made a real three. And we are, I don't really want to say too much about it because I want you to determine whether this is a high probability trade or not, and why. This is the most important part of it, is the why. Remember, the things that are for it, things that are against it, the pluses and the minuses. We're always weighing those against each other. And we have written in stone our rules, right? So the rules are the black and white, can't break the rules. And those are the bare minimum requirements. By the way, that's one thing that did come in. Good question. Thank you, by the way, for you people who are sending in questions. Really appreciate that. And you all are welcome to continue to do that. In fact, I encourage you to do that. That's how I can help you, which is what I'm here to do. So, yeah, one of the questions was, oh, wait a minute, Barry, I'm a little confused now. You're talking about, you know, your method is very objective and rule-based, but then you start talking about, you know, certain trades that have higher probabilities, such as when they have concurrent cycle highs or lows, concurrent setups, this whole concept of fewer better trades. So how does that jive with, you know, the fact that you say, well, you have black and white rules? Okay, great question. Want to be clear on that. So what I give you in Foundations Course 1 and 2, I do give you the bare minimum rules. So there are rules there that you cannot break. Now, so that's like your bottom line. That's the lowest threshold that you can go with my methodology if you want to stay true to my method. So you can't be any more fluid with your rules as far as compromising or lowering, that's maybe a better word, lowering the requirements of a trade. So yeah, I like that way of saying it. You can't lower your requirements any lower than that. That's the bare minimum lowest requirements. Now, if you want to increase your requirements of a trade and say, no, these are the bare minimum rules, but I want to add a little more certainty, then you can add to those rules to be a more conservative trader. And that's when the things like concurrent cycle lows come in, concurrent cycles highs, concurrent setups, all those kind of things. So that's where you have some flexibility depending on your risk tolerance. And I think that's a good way of saying it too. Trading is, you know, it's somewhat, well, there's a psychological aspect to it, obviously. And part of that psychological aspect is we all have a little different risk tolerance. Well, some of us have a lot different risk tolerance, I guess. So based on that, you can customize this methodology for you to make it more conservative, but not loosen it up, not make it more liberal, in other words, not to compromise. Okay, and I would actually encourage you to make it a little more conservative, but there's a downside, right? There's, heck, you know, I don't know if we're even going to get to this. Since I'm on this topic, I'm going to just finish this topic up and we'll come back to the quiz in the next video. I can see where I'm going already. So, but this is an important thing, and since the question did come up several times, I want to address it because it really is important. It actually has nothing to do with the setup here on this chart. But, so there are pluses and minuses to go either way. So if you go with the bare minimum rules, okay, then you'll get more trades. So that's the plus, right? You get more trades, and that's another psychological aspect of trading is some people get very antsy or very discouraged when they don't see enough high probability trade entries. And then, a couple things can happen from there. Either the response can be, oh, I don't like this because I don't get enough trade entries, abandon the system and go to another system that gives more trade entries, somebody else's or another company or whatever. And typically then they lose money because the fact is the markets don't give us a large number of high probability trade setups. And that's just the fact, Jack. That's just the truth, Ruth. That's just the deal, Neil. It doesn't, because most of the time, the markets are very efficient. So if you ever read the book Random Walk Down Wall Street, that's what they talk about in that book. Now, they went to an extreme where they said, at no time does the market ever give you a high probability setup. That the entire market at all times is basically a random walk. And totally efficient because everything that can be known about the markets is already known. That information is already taken into account. Therefore, you can never establish an edge. Now, since of course, there were a lot of very famous book, interesting. I don't know if you really need to read the whole thing. I don't think you do. But anyway, if you want to, it's interesting. But because it was so famous, because of such a radical statement, there was a lot of response to it. A lot of it positive, some of it negative. The negative part of it was, well, wait a minute. How do you explain then that there are people who do make money consistently and have made it over years and even decades? And at first the response was, well, those are the outliers. That's just part of the numbers of chance, But there's many people that didn't believe that, including myself. And so I do believe, here's what I came up with. I'll just go straight to my conclusion. My conclusion is that I think they are right most of the time. The market is unpredictable into the future the vast majority of the time. I don't have an actual percentage for you, but let's say 90-95% of the time probably is within the ballpark. But there are times when we do get an edge, and this is, of course, the foundation of the 5 energy methodology. We are looking for really just the money flow. When the money flow is all positive or all negative, bullish or bearish, from the 5 non-correlated energies, well, then the odds are on our side. If you got a bunch of major players, institutions, and so forth coming in and buying, and you're getting in early at that new buying, then they come in with accumulation, as we've talked about before, which means they can't bring all their money in at one time. Otherwise, it pushes the price of the market up really fast. And then by the time they get all of their shares, contracts, or lots filled, the final portion of that size is getting filled at a very high price. They don't want that. So they try to keep the price low. They try to stay under the radar. And, the market does move up a bit, but they're not paying as much as they would if they brought it in all at one time. So that's actually what we're looking for. And that's why back testing means nothing. All that matters, right, is the moment. When do we see that momentum starting to kick in? And the momentum is literally caused by the large money. And by the way, it's not only the size of the money, it's not only the size of the volume per bar, it's the size per trade, because that is the one thing that really reveals if the big money's involved. So you could get let's say 100,000 shares come in, but it's all the dumb money, right? All retailers. They're all getting excited, and you just got tons of retailers, but they don't know what they're doing. So they're usually emotionally excited about something for whatever reason. But that's not going to last. So the other part of the smart money is not only are they bringing in a lot of volume, but they know what they're doing. They're smart people. So they're more likely to be right than to be wrong. So you get that on your side as well. All right. And that's what we're looking for. Bottom line, boil it all down, that's what we're doing. All right. So when it comes to looking for a lot of trades, the market's not that generous. Most of the time the market is in a random walk. There is no high probability scenario. There's no way to predict what's going to happen, even in the short term. It just isn't there because it is true. The market is very, very efficient the vast majority of the time, and therefore you cannot establish an edge. So this is why overtrading is one of the biggest problems people have. And I'll tell you, that was one of my biggest problems too. Maybe I'll do a video someday on what my own personal biggest challenges were, but I'll tell you right now, that was one of them. Overtrading, oh my gosh, that was one of my biggest challenges to overcome. And I still, kind of wrestle with it a little bit now and then, but I've come up with ways to overcome that. So, we want to trade. We love trading, so we want more trades. And also the more trades you get, at least the potential of more money you can make as long as they're winning. But that's the problem, is that the market most of the time is not a situation where you can establish a probability. Think of it like poker. So you're dealt a certain hand, right? The first time around, I'm not a poker player, so I don't really understand this very well, but I've played and I've talked to professional poker players, even champion poker players. And it was very interesting to me because I saw the correlation with trading. And I've read a couple of poker books, which I did just for money management purposes. And it's the same thing. They say, you know what? Most professional poker players fold their first hand over and over and over and over. And they don't play unless they have a good first hand. And that's the cardinal sin of amateur poker players, is that they play hands they should never be playing. Why? Because it's boring, right? Who wants to be folding most of your hands? Who wants to be sitting and watching the market, not do anything and not take a trade, not participate? It's hard psychologically to do that. And so then we get distracted by shiny objects and people who tell us that, oh, you can get more trades over here, so we move over there, not understanding that's just not the way that's just not the nature of the market, and it's not going to happen. So anyway, that's it for now. Got a little sidetracked there, but that topic did come up, that question did come up, and we'll come back to this chart on the next video.